everybody to another episode of 22 Questions. I'm your host Nico, and today we have a up-and-coming titan of real estate. He, started out on his lunch breaks, taking calls, setting up meetings for the weekends, and now he has a whole team dedicated to just real estate deals. Today we're going to be interviewing the magnificent, the wonderful Mr. Hunter Jarvis. How are you today, sir?
I'm good, Nico. How are you, man?
Good. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Just as cursory, just for everybody, what exactly do you do? Like, what is your business?
So I run two separate real estate businesses, kind of in tandem, but the personnel do not overlap at all. So what I do on the single-family side is it's very transactional. So it's direct to seller marketing, and then we're buying and flipping these houses. So typically I'm only holding these properties for a very short amount of time as we rehab them and then sell them. On the multifamily side, I'm actually acquiring apartment complexes and holding them for a very long time. So that hold period might be as long as 10 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What kind of set you down on this road of real estate? What is the catalyst to all of this?
Yeah, so I was right out of college. I took a job as a teller at a bank, and I was just depositing checks, cashing checks for customers, and sort of worked my way up into the loan administration office. And I was basically an assistant for a loan officer, and we were making a lot of loans to real estate entrepreneurs. And I just noticed that our wealthiest clients and the clients whose businesses I tended to be most interested in when we were looking at making a loan, they revolved around real estate. And so that was kind of my foray into realizing that I really wanted to be in real estate. And so I quickly took a job at a publicly traded REIT that was based out of Phoenix that had relocated to Dallas. And I was just managing big box retail stores in our portfolio, and kind of transitioned into the multifamily apartment space through a private equity group at that point, and worked there for a number of years and launched kind of my own little side hustle along the way that just snowballed into a full-time gig.
Gotcha. Did you have any milestones in mind when you were first starting out? Like, I should reach this milestone by X date?
I do. I always have goals that I write down on a sheet of paper, and I not only have a goal, but I have a specific date that I want to achieve the goal by. And it's something that I believe has helped me, basically my whole professional career. I've saved them on my computer, so I can look back at what my goals were when, in 2017 when I started tracking it. And it's amazing to see what your progress looks like, and how what a huge goal looked like to you 5 years ago is a fraction of, you might do that in a month now,
right?
Revenue-wise or deals-wise or whatever. So I definitely track, and I definitely keep a sheet of goals and kind of hold myself accountable to them. I read them every day.
What was that first goal that you remember that you were so excited to reach? You were like, finally, this is the first sign that I'm making it. This is the direction to go.
It started off very basic. It was do one deal a month when I first started. Just one deal a month. I just wanted to do one flip a month, and I felt like if I could get that done, I would have it all made. I could retire.
What do you like looking at right now? I don't know if you want to share that, but
yeah, no, it's fine. Now our business is doing anywhere from 15 to 20 transactions at a time. So any given time we're doing 15 to 20 deals. And I think that there's a lot of room, a lot of room to grow even on top of that.
Right. Okay. When you started out, some people, they find mentors. Did you have any mentors?
I did, not in the sense of like an individual person per se that I would go to and sit down with and have regular meetings with, but I'm a huge advocate of reading and studying the people that came before us. And so I just spend a lot of time reading books. I've got a huge bookcase at my house, and I read everything from biographies of famous people that have achieved a lot, or niche specific reading, like real estate specific reading. So I do a little bit of both, and then I'm always consuming podcasts. I'm always consuming, YouTube is great these days for information. And then another thing that's been very beneficial to my career is joining mastermind groups. So groups of people across the country that you pay money for to be in a room with, and basically you can share secrets of the trade and kind of learn things from. So all of those things combined have kind of formed like an education or mentorship kind of program that I've kind of sort of crafted myself.
Okay, gotcha. What are some of your favorite podcasts to listen to?
Favorite podcast to listen to? One of my very favorites right now is a podcast called Founders. It's a guy named David Sinra. He's based out of Florida. And what he does is he reads a book every single week, and it could be a real long, I mean, he might spend 40 hours a week reading an 800-page biography on Winston Churchill or Ben Franklin or Elon Musk, and he comes to the podcast every single week with, you know, excerpts from the book and his notes and kind of a soup to nuts of like, what was Elon Musk like as a kid? How did he become who he is? And he highlights specific things that these people do to become who they are. And so I've just been obsessed with that podcast lately.
Hoping to be on it someday?
Maybe. You never know, man. I mean, it's funny because a lot of these guys that he's talking about, Sam Walton, he's the founder of Walmart. He didn't start doing what he was doing until he was 40 years old. He didn't establish Walmart until he was 40. Now, he was always working on Walmart, but Walmart didn't become Walmart until he was 40 years old. So it's just like things like that are cool to me to find out, because it just means that, you know, young people like you and I, you know, we just have a lot of...
It's a lifelong journey, you know. It's not just, you know, especially nowadays, at least kids my age, I feel that we have this urge and need because of social media that we have to be successful now. Like we have to be, you know, at that multi-million-dollar stage right out of college, and we take it for granted that those things aren't realistic. Those are outliers.
100%.
You know, it's a journey.
All that glitters is not gold. What you see on I don't even have social media on my phone anymore because I found myself scrolling too much, you know, and thinking about too much about other things instead of just focusing on what I'm trying to get done. So I have access to the thing. I have accounts, but you know, they're off of my phone specifically so that I don't get wrapped into that.
Gotcha. So, you know, in the real estate business, everybody works with lenders, right? Everybody works with banks. What has your experience been working with banks? You said you worked as a bank teller, you know, positive, negatives. What are like disaster nightmare scenario that happened to you versus like the best case scenario that happened to you? Yeah,
relationships are key. So first of all, have quality relationships, but then have more than one would be my advice to you. So if you're going to be borrowing money from lenders and you're going to own and operate a business that revolves around, you know, obtaining debt financing, have multiple options. You know, I can tell you one kind of war story of mine. I was buying my second apartment complex. I was buying in October of 2020. And we were under contract. I had hard earnest money, non-refundable is what that means. So I had a deposit at the title company that if I didn't close the deal, I didn't get back. And it was a lot of money for me at the time. And I had secured a loan through a new lender relationship that I didn't have. Somebody had referred me to this person. And about 2 weeks before the close date, he pulled out of the deal on me and said, I can't approve you for this transaction. You know, I can't, you know, whatever happened. Bunch of excuses, and I was left without, you know, the largest portion of the payment for the property is the loan. So I had to quickly scramble and go to other options that I had available to me just based off of kind of my networking and some of the people that I knew, and I was able to get a loan closed very quickly. But had I not had another option, you know, that deal might not happen.
Yeah, it's always good to have, you know, options open, like, you know, things like that. You never know that they're going to happen. And you know, would you say what saved you is the relationships that you build with other lenders?
Yeah.
Is that what saved you?
Yeah, be a credible person. You know, have your finances in order too, because you know, obviously any lender is going to underwrite you as a person as well as the deal. So of course they want to look at the property and make sure that it checks out. But then they also are going to make sure that you check out. You know, you need to not have any, you know, criminal offenses on your record. You need to have your accounting in check. You know, if your books are all over the place, no lender's going to be able to tell if you're worthy of a loan or not. So make sure that you're buttoned up, that you're presentable, that you can kind of create a almost like a presentation of why this is a good opportunity, and kind of come prepared with risks and mitigating factors. You know, that could happen. All those
like
sorts
exit
of things.
strategies.
Exit strategies, or just downside scenario protections. They're going to want to say, how do I get hurt on this? You know, as a lender, they have to go to their loan committee and basically vouch for you. So they have to be able to tell the people that control whether they have a job or not why they should make a loan to Nico for this deal. And you got to be able to kind of tell that story.
Gotcha. If you had to start over again, what would you do differently? Like, what are some things that you kind of regret doing? What are some things that you are thankful that you did?
Yeah. I would say one of the things that I would do differently is I would probably trust myself earlier on. What I mean by that is I think I cost myself a lot of money by maintaining my businesses as a side hustle for too long. Mm-hmm. I left the private equity group that I was working for in 2021, but I feel that had I just kind of had the courage to leave prior to that, I probably would be farther along now than I am. So just short-term sacrifices, meaning sacrificing a salary or a nice kind of comfort. Get out of your. I was in a comfort zone situation. I had an income that I could rely on while also keep the side hustle. But I think that choked my growth for too long. And then
it's just terrifying to take that leap, right? You're nice and steady, like. It's safe, right? That's what it is. It's going from safe to something that's like completely risky,
completely risky and on your own, and eat what you kill, and but at the same time, I believe that if you prepare for it and you're not just kind of, you certainly want to, you're not jumping out of a plane without a parachute. You've planned it, you've mapped it out. I think once you've done that and you've experienced some success in doing what you've done. And call it, okay, you're doing $500,000 a year in revenue off of, part-time work, call it 20 hours a week of work. Imagine what you could do at 40 hours a week. So just have the logic to kind of run through that scenario and then have the confidence to execute.
How did, your first deal feel like? Like, do you remember back to that first deal? Like, what did that feel like?
Yeah, it was a great feeling. And it was a very small amount of money compared to what the deals look like today. Yeah. But, when you get that first check that you completely self-generated, based off of the knowledge that you've gone out and kind of obtained for yourself, it's a cool feeling. It's a really cool feeling, really. It's like when you cook something yourself, you appreciate it a little bit more. That's like what it
tastes a little better.
Tastes a little better, man. That's what it's like, and it just kind of gives you that boost and that confidence, like, okay, this is real. This is a real thing. This is no longer information in a podcast or a book that I read. This is real life.
It's
like
tangible.
This is money that I'm gonna put in my bank.
I can hold it. Right?
Yep. So it's a cool feeling once you kind of run it the first time, and then it really kind of flips that switch, and you're like, okay, how can I replicate this now and keep this going?
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. That's what everybody's scared of. It's like, that moment that you have to completely rely on yourself. I also feel like everybody kind of grows up in a situation, well, not everybody, but those who are fortunate enough to, go to college and all that, it's all kind of already set up for you, right? And so it's kind of scary, and then you realize, oh, I can do this by myself. Like, I'm self-reliant.
Yeah, and I think, like activities like what you're doing right now, talking to people like me, is going to help you if that's something that you want to do in your future, because you talk to enough people and you've seen enough people that it's not a foreign concept to you anymore. It almost becomes normal. So, like, I believe that, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around. So if you hang around a bunch of people that own their own businesses, it's no longer a mythical concept to you.
Yeah, it's just normal.
Like, that's a normal thing, right? And so I was blessed with a dad who's an entrepreneur. Yeah. So he showed me kind of what it was like to work for yourself and kind of control your own destiny. So it was never a weird thing or a strange thing for me. It's kind of like something I always expected to do.
Right. Do you still have, what is it that excites you now when you make a deal? Because, the first deal is like, oh, right, this is like whatever, $10,000 check. Like, oh my God, I made this $10,000. This is amazing. Best feeling in the world. Let's go for some Korean barbecue or something like that. Let's celebrate. What is it now, like something that you'd say, this is a celebratory deal, like closing 50 deals in a month, 20 deals in a month? Like, what is it for you now?
There's 2 things for me now that really ignite me. Number one is now I have employees. It's not just me anymore. So the number one thing is when I see people that work for me who have taken my instruction and now they are making six-figure earnings on a given year in their young, mid-20s, and they're telling me things like, I never would have been able to do this before I worked here, or anything like, things like that. That really makes me happy when I see people that are working in my organization and they're just really prospering, and they're learning, they're having fun with what they do. We enjoy our team and our environment, and then at the same time they're making more money than they could anywhere else. Right. So that gives me a lot of joy, because I'm already at the point where, I've made money, a modest amount of money, not anything that's like I can retire or anything like that, but cashing a check is not so much the adrenaline rush anymore that it used to be. So that's number one. I would say number two for me is not the income that comes in. So like, let's say we close a deal that we make $50,000 on. That's great, $50,000 is great. But if you're not gonna then take that $50,000 and find a profitable channel to allocate it to, then it's almost wasted money, because what's going to happen is it's just going to sit in a bank account, or it's going to get spent on Korean barbecue, So find something. Now what gets me excited is finding opportunities to then invest that money that's going to grow while I sleep. And for me, it's mostly family apartments. So that's kind of where my mindset is now, is I've got the income generation part. I need the wealth building now is kind of what I'm focusing on.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that's awesome. This is, everybody's probably going to have the same opinion, but like interest rates, man, how do you feel about interest rates right now? Like now they like pause interest rates, but like, as a business owner, especially in real estate where, it's almost everything is a loan, right? How has that impacted you, and how have you mitigated, the rise in interest rates?
Yeah, I think we're all getting a pretty important lesson in macroeconomics right now. I mean, I had never, up to this point in my professional career, interest rates have always been at like all-time lows. So I've never really had to think all that much about it. And a lot of people that are even a lot older than me have never had to think about it, because it's been since really the 80s since it's been anything kind of close to this. So, for me, I've always been a conservative borrower. So I always borrow on fixed rate terms. I try to do long-term fixed-rate debt, so there's nothing that's floating, there's no short-term maturities, which has protected me in this time on my apartment deals, because the loans that I locked in are at 3% interest or 4% interest, or even I just closed a $13 million deal in April. It's a 5.5% interest rate, but I know what it's going to be for the next 10 years because I locked it in. So I'm not worried about fluctuations of interest rates. I keep the leverage low. I don't lever up to 80% on anything. So for me, I'm less affected by it. Not the only thing, but one of the major effects right now that I'm experiencing is just transaction volume is lower, because people are still having to adjust to the new environment that we're in, and I think it's the new normal. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I think we're going to be in an elevated interest rate environment for quite a while. So it's just going to take time for values to kind of adjust to that. But once they do, it's just going to be business as usual for me.
Right. There's a YouTuber that I follow called Ben Mala. I don't know if you've heard of him. So this guy is just like a real estate tycoon. He's got like $500 million empire of real estate. Yeah, okay. He's out in Florida, and he's just a YouTube personality at this point, because he's just imagine a bombastic guy just on YouTube. Like, that's him. That's his personality. Okay. And one thing that he always preaches is always negotiate. Everything is negotiable. Life is negotiable. Yeah. What's your experience been like negotiating with lenders, and what has that been like, and how have you navigated that those circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, you don't know if you don't ask. Is what I've come to realize. It's the truth. So terms are negotiable for the most part. Things can change just because of what you get on paper as far as an offer or terms. It doesn't mean that you can't come to the table and try to negotiate something different. So I would agree with that. I mean, part of what we do on the direct-to-seller single-family side is we're negotiating contracts for houses all day long. So if you find what the most important thing is for somebody, then it gives you a stronger negotiating stance, because sometimes money isn't it. Sometimes, case in point, if we're sitting there in somebody's living room and we want to buy a house from them, and they're kind of stuck on a certain timeline or a certain price or whatever, sometimes if you dig a little bit deeper, it's not so much that, it's they end up telling you that like they're actually afraid to sell their house to you because they don't know where they would go if they sell the house. So it's just simply like, okay, well, if that's your concern, we've got an in-house realtor that you can tell exactly what you're looking for, and we can find you the next house that you want to live in that's within your budget, or the apartment that you want to live in that's within your budget. And so now we've completely removed the obstacle of the timeline or the purchase price for the house or whatever it is, once you just have an understanding of what's important to the other side of the negotiating stance, So it's just, you really have to kind of dig in on what the driver is for the other person before you can really be prepared to negotiate effectively.
Gotcha. Do you think that, how much has your dad, impacted you in terms of, you kind of alluded to this in the past, but seeing your dad being an entrepreneur and showing him that you can work for yourself, right? How's that impacted you? And is there anybody else that might have, influenced those thoughts of, I can do this, like I can work for myself and make a living?
Yeah, no, for sure. For my dad specifically, he's always just been a very competitive person, always been a achiever, just a driver kind of personality. He's financially set for life if he wants to be. He's 62 years old and could, golf all day long if he wants to. But he's just kind of he's just of the belief that life is meant to be lived on a kind of a constant upward trajectory. And, so that definitely had an impact on me for sure, coupled with, just teaching me what it's like to have self-confidence in doing something. Try things that, don't be afraid to try something. If you fail, it's better that you failed trying than never trying it at all. So that's kind of something that I've lived by. The other thing that's really helped me in my life too is just sports. So I grew up playing sports my whole life.
Which sports did you play?
Track, football. I played college football at Arkansas. And it just kind of helps you. It helped me. Whenever I got into a professional environment, just because I was used to just competing, I was used to just competing and having to, prove to yourself that you can do something. And so I think that definitely translated for me as well.
Gotcha. Well, listen, those are all the questions for today. I really want to thank you. It's been really informative. It's been a great experience for me. We've definitely learned a lot, and our viewers are probably learning a lot right now.
All right.
But, thank you, and thanks for coming out. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man. Anytime.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.